They have not won. The Timberwolves have not won a playoff series since 2004. So this culture, they've had some good players too. So much of sports is creating cultures and winning cultures. And then sometimes you need to get an Anthony Edwards. And then sometimes you have to take a big swing on a trade. And they did with Rudy Gobert. So the Minnesota Timberwolves now are the best team in the league. They have the best record, best defensive team. They allow the lowest field goal percentage of any defense in the NBA. And their coach is Chris Finch. He's going to face Wemby and the Spurs tonight. So, like, when you got there, and it's not a winning culture, and you'd been all over Europe, and you had some good players. How do you make guys believe, listen, we can be a playoff team eventually? Like was the hardest thing convincing young players we can win here? Was it hard?
Yeah, I mean, these jobs are always hard, particularly when you get them. You know, most of the coaching changes and opportunities in the league, Colin, come when you take over, you know, teams that aren't successful, you know, and it's a hard climb after that. You know, the key to it all was just getting us to understand what competing looked like, you know, competing every night, competing every single time down the floor. You know, sometimes you can go through periods of play in the NBA where you're more performing than you are competing, and those teams don't win at a high level. You got to compete all the time. So that was really the first thing. I was just talking about what it felt like, what it meant to compete through every part of the game. And then, you know, you build some momentum, you build some good habits, and then your young players start to grow up, and, you know, then you can feel things changing. And you, as you pointed out, you got to have talent, but you also, you know, you got to take swings and augment the roster in the right way and keep building on what you've been doing.
When the league got small, and I always thought to myself, well, it works because of Steph Curry. Maybe it's a Steph Curry thing, and it doesn't necessarily. My entire life, big basketball players did well. And you guys are like, you know, we're going to go the opposite of the small ball. We're going to get gigantic. And there was a lot of, myself included, I'm like, I don't know. You already got a big. Was there a moment for you where you were like, I don't know if this is going to work? It has, but did you know it was going to work?
Yeah, I mean, we felt it was going to work, but we also felt it was going to take time. You know, going into the last season, we thought it would take us about 40 games, maybe 50 games, which is about half the season, if not more, to really figure it out. You know, that got a bit derailed with the Karl-Anthony Towns injury. And then it became just a matter of kind of surviving and continually reinventing ourselves. But we learned a lot about it while we were able to be together. The key to it all, and, you know, if you're, to your point, like, if you're not better at small ball than the people who are really good at small ball are, you're going to lose anyway. So you might as well try to be different. And that's just the case. But the intriguing thing about it now is, like, all these bigs are so skilled. I mean, it works because Naz Reid and Karl-Anthony Towns, I mean, these guys have the skill of perimeter players, right? And we can employ them as such at times, but yet we still have great length, you know, to be really good defensively around the rim, rebounding, and all the other things that go with being big.
Did you have to sell players on the in-season tournament?
You know, no, not at all. And that is the biggest takeaway from the in-season tournament for me. It's just how much the players have embraced and really enjoyed it. And, you know, like many people, we didn't all understand the mechanics of it, you know, and the points differential. And there's a lot of kind of odd things, which makes it unique. And it really wasn't about the money of, you know, the prize money is certainly significant. I think the prize money actually tops out more than championship bonuses that were earned last year by the Nuggets. So it's certainly substantial. I'm not discounting that, but it really kind of sparked the competitive nature, made these early season games doubly meaningful because they also count as league games. But, you know, guys were locked in. They were excited. They were asking a ton of questions, and they were looking forward to it.
So the other night I watched Ime Udoka and LeBron get into it, and I just don't see Chris Finch doing that. But it is interesting. In the course of your career, have you ever had moments where you kind of poke a player? Like, what is the relationship coach to player intense? They're snooping on your huddle. They're talking trash. What are you comfortable with?
You know, having been in the league, we've coached a lot of these guys, and we have existing relationships, and much of the banter might be around that. But being competitive, sometimes we get drawn into less than fortunate interactions. I think we all have a few of those we probably like back. But generally it's a very well behaved kind of relationship between coach and opposing player.
Yeah, you face Wemby tonight. It's the second time you face him. You're probably not a good matchup for him because you got two veteran defenders, and Gobert's a great defender. He's I've watched him play 4 or 5 times. My takeaway is he's obviously gifted, but these are kids. Yeah. It's a more physical league. I think guys really, veteran players like to show the kid. They like to block his. They like to push him around. Yeah. Your takeaway on what you've seen so far from Wemby?
The thing that impresses me the most, the skill and the size it's obvious. When you see him in person, there is a wow factor to it. But the thing that impresses me the most is really his maturity and his composure. He never complains to the referees, never has any kind of negative interaction with his teammates. When the opponents come at him physically, he responds. He doesn't get down. He just keeps an even keel. His maturity, it's very impressive for somebody of his age and being first time in the league. Just nothing seems to bother him.
When you get a transcendent athlete, he just does. It doesn't look like other players. There's like 4 guys in the league at any one time in my life, maybe 3. Dominique, Michael, Anthony, just looks different. He does different stuff. How much is coaching? How much is you staying out of the way? How much? Because there are players, and he's one of one, that do things that most people on the planet will never do. Is he harder to coach, easier to coach when you have these super hyper athletic stars?
Yeah. He's a joy to coach, extremely coachable. With him, coaching is about teaching and holding accountable, when you have to, and he allows that, and he enjoys that. He embraces it. I've always maintained the approach that as coaches at this level, we have to create the structure, the philosophy, and then kind of get out of the way and let these guys be the great players that they really are. Certainly guys like Anthony and, some of the guys that you've mentioned and many guys in the league right now, you don't want to overcoach those guys because they have talent and ability inside of them that they're going to reach, and you can only get in the way at times. You can only put obstacles there. So I'm really big on creating as much freedom for our players, certainly offensively, as we possibly can. And then obviously as a young player learns the league and learns different defenses and what teams are doing against them, that's where we can help him as coaches as he kind of evaluates all that.
Best record in the league. Does that mean anything to you?
At this point in time, it doesn't. We're certainly proud of our start. We came into the season wanting to hang our hat on defense. We've been able to do that. We needed to create an identity. The returns on what we set out to do are positive, but we got a long way to go, as we know. It's certainly great to have a cushion when you get off to such a great start, create that kind of buzz about you. But, we're not satisfied with where we are yet.
All right. Chris Finch, T-Wolves, congrats on the season. Are you always into work this early? This is what time you get into work?
Well, I'm just, I got a game or a little bit of early game tonight. So just killing time here in my office, waiting to join the herd.
That was nice. We appreciate that. You could be home hanging out. We appreciate that, Coach. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.